It's an honor to be able to share my testimony. My name's Elijah. A lot of people know me locally as Tony's kid. Just these past couple months, I've actually been able to get a word out for myself. But it all started before I was even born. I mean, I feel like that. I feel like Jeremiah, that God just had a calling on me. I mean, God had blessed me so much and given me the opportunity to live with Tony, and it kind of feels like God never even really gave me a chance to go out and do the things that I wanted to do. And I'm not saying that He's that kind of God, but I was raised in a preacher's home my whole life. I never changed. I never got to smoke or drink alcohol, or not that I ever wanted to. And I thank God for that. That even in my sin, that I never even wanted to do stuff like that. But it all really started when I was a little boy. You hear your daddy preach, your whole life, and when you're little, it's just something that you hear. But once you get older and you become the age of accountability, it starts to become real to you, and you start applying it to your life. And I really don't remember the age whenever I first professed my faith, and it was a false profession, but I remember that probably 15 years old was whenever I got into high school. It really ruined me. Not that I did anything wrong. I've never stole, never cheated. I mean, I lied a lot, but that was just my flesh. But I just knew that there was something missing in my life. I saw my friends. They had it, and my dad would preach, and I'd just get bothered by it. I mean, there'd be tears just come to my eyes sitting there listening to him or just anybody preach. And I've always seen the life that the preacher's supposed to live, and I wasn't living that life even as a Christian. I'd seen that I never prayed or never opened the book, and the times that I did, I just read little things, little verses that just would encourage the mind, and I would just falsely lead myself to think that I was all right. And as a 15-year-old boy, I remember that I got convicted one night, and I was sitting in the back of the expedition. And I remember that I was crying, and Mom was there with me. And, I don't remember if I came in or not. I really don't. But I know that I didn't get it that night. But I remember one night coming home to my dad and just crying, saying, "Dad, I'm afraid I'm going to die and go to hell. And not see you again or see none of my family." He'd always led that example, but he told me this. He said, "I don't think God would send anybody to hell that wants to be saved." And so that thought really got to me. And I remember one night when I was convicted, I got down on this altar right here in front of us and got saved. Like I said, a lot of people locally know me. I'd ministered my whole life through music, just about it. But finally, one day as a 15-year-old boy, I finally figured out who I was singing about. And I finally figured out that His love is true. And there's so many people today that turn away from the Lord, people my age. And even I find now, even as a preacher, I'll get in how that happened in a minute, but chasing this rabbit, I find even today, as even people my age, it's there's no people that believe in God anymore. I mean, I've been blessed with the opportunity to be sent to the University of the Cumberlands. I mean, you never see a time when your own professor will witness to you about God and tell the class an open prayer, before we even start a class. It don't happen anymore. I mean, you go to public school my age now, and there's no God in it. We don't even stand for the flag and do the Pledge of Allegiance anymore. There's just no respect for anything anymore in the school system. But back in 2019, I guess this was right when I got saved. I had more zeal than I did knowledge. And I knew the Lord was convicting me about a ministry in my life besides singing. And I chased it. But, unfortunately, I let the flesh get in the way. And unfortunately, I didn't fulfill that thing, that desire that the Lord had me to do. And I ran from it. I can't always say there's been times that I was convicted about it, because sometimes, through that time period I was out of the will of God, not doing what I was supposed to do. But it seems like recently, whenever I found some good friends, Brother Isaac and Brother Dax, and You know, Brother Matt and Brother Jeremy, you know, you get around some good godly friends and you see that they've got it and you wonder where the heck yours is. But I came to myself and I realized that I need to just dedicate my life back to God. So I rededicated my life, and as soon as I did that, Brother Maverick, the drawing of preaching came back on me.
Amen.
And I remember sitting there, and Dad can attest to it. I remember sitting there and just being mad because I'd read the Bible, and nothing would come. I'd try to study out a message, and I just never could. I never could dedicate my time to just sitting down and reading even a page bothered me. I never read a book. I would take the failing grade just to pass not to read a book in my life. I probably never even finished a book ever in my entire life. But I remember one night, you know, I seen the testimony of what Brother Isaac, he came to our church, thank God, and, you know, he'd just been preaching 2 months, and, you know, I got to actually hang out with him and hang around him, and I saw what it took to be a preacher. And, you know, and I know that it's not a calling for everybody, but I knew God had called me, and I knew that He wanted me to do this. And yes, I had a daddy to show by example, but when you see someone your age do something that you don't do, it just shocks you. Because especially to do something for the Lord, the time that he spent in prayer and reading, and I know this is my testimony, but it helped me just to see that the brother would do all that stuff. And he knew what it took too, because his daddy was a preacher. But just revealing, you know, I prayed one night to the Lord that, you know, Lord, if I just give it all to you, you know, you just use me as you be. And ever since then, and I ain't bragging on myself or nothing, but I've stayed consistent with the Lord. And I'm thankful that you know, there's days that I fail in. There's days that this flesh, but thankfully from a witness, I was able to figure out what it's like to crucify the flesh and to fulfill those desires, you know, of the Lord, not of yourself, and to give it to Him. You know, I was shown that example, and that thankfully the Lord has helped me through that seed that's been planted. You know, if I had to say anything before we close this out, you know, plant that seed, because you never know what will help. I try to, you know, ever since Isaac planted that into my life, I try to plant it into my life too, other people's. And I hope that I can be an encouragement to other people too, because you never know what they're going through. You know, it bothers me, Brother Maverick, anymore just to have a dirty thought. You just get down and feel like a low, dirty dog. Or to hear your friend say a cuss word and you be like, hey, that ain't right. You know, I find myself too many times being around stuff, and every time I see something worldly or hear something worldly, I say, forgive them, Lord. You know, when Jesus was on the cross, He said, before He even blessed His own mother, He said, forgive them, Father, for they know not what they do.
Amen.
So that's how I try to be. You know, I've been cheated. I've been cussed at. You know, I've been looked at funny for my beliefs, but I'm glad through and through that God's never looked at me funny. He's never left me nor forsaken me. He said over in Matthew, the very last chapter, He said, lo, I am with you always, even to the end of the earth. I'm thankful for that. But that's my testimony. Thankful for the opportunity to share it. Plant that seed, because you never know who's listening or who's watching, Christian.